feel like talking about my rating system, so that's what I'm gonna do. The first criterion is main characters. And what I want from main characters or point of view characters is the feeling that there is a real person with thoughts and emotions and an idea about their place in the world, the place that they do inhabit, the place that they want to inhabit, and the future they are going for, the needs they have, the desires they have, the fears they have. And I want to see them interact with their own inner life, with their own thoughts and all this psychological stuff. And I want to see them interact with other people and these people's emotions and have interactions with their relationships. Think about their relationships, reflect that, reflect the world and the conflicts and all things happening. And I don't like the feeling that the main character or point of view characters are just little machines that move through the plot and only think as much as the plot requires it to work. Yeah, and I need a feeling that there is someone who has an identity, not just for me to look at from the outside, but also an inner identity that they really exist manifestly. There is a thing there, an entity there, and I also need them, or to get this, there needs to be communicated a feeling that these characters have life outside of the plot, that there was a life before the events of the story took place, that they had dreams before that, desires, wishes, fears, identity and all that. And it's not that you really expect things, events fit to be told in a novel take place in your life. So this all isn't really expected, so it has to clash with the things that were before, and there is innate conflict in the start of a novel, and I need to see that, and I want to have a feeling that there is something after the plot, there will be something after the plot is over. And this, yeah, that's what I need. And a novel that does this very well is Hotel Paradise by Martha Grimes. And this book has other problems, but up until the point where it stopped being fun for me and where I stopped reading on my first go, is exactly that. The main character, Emma, she's the I narrator, the personal narrator, ego perspective. I don't know the English word, but she's the I in the story, and her name drops once very far to the end on the last few pages of the novel. Her name is mentioned, but I never noticed that I didn't know her name, and I got the feeling of her being there. And that's not just because the novel is told stream of consciousness-y in many places, but because she thinks about stuff, she reflects about all the things I mentioned before, and not just enough for the plot to work, but enough for a person to work. We see her do emotional work in this story, and that was just wonderful, and I love that about a novel. And it's a huge plus for me if a novel has it. If it doesn't have that, I can't connect. I get more disinterested more easily. Yeah, so that's also why this is the first criterion on the list. The second criterion, side characters, or characters who aren't point of view characters, so non-POV characters. For them, I have the same expectations, requirements as I have for main characters. I want the same inner life and all this nice stuff. Of course, you cannot show the inner life of a character who isn't a point of view character, but you can show how these inner processes show themselves in their behavior, in the way they talk, the way they move, look, behave. And also you have situations where characters who are in a whatever kind of relationship talk about this relationship, or talk about their goals, talk about their feelings, and this can happen there. And yeah, so you can show inner life. It's a little more subtle, but you can do it. And I also need to feel that side characters have a life outside the plot. This is a very important thing, and I have, these videos are in German, but if you by any chance are fluent enough in German, I have videos about character development and a podcast together with my friend Ela, where we talk about this. So if German tells you something, links are in the description. They need a life outside of the plot, because otherwise it's just like whenever they're needed, the side characters are lowered down on a rope from the ceiling to interact with the main character, and then they are pulled up again and put in a freezer or something. And I need to feel that there is more, because having a life outside, of course you cannot tell everything about this, but there are symptoms of that. There are symptoms of what a character wants, what a character feels, what their current situation is, and these you can show subtly in their interactions, in their availability, in the way they talk, behave, all this stuff. And here again is Hotel Paradise is a very good example, because we only have Emma as a point of view, but the side characters, they are described, they have all these things I talked about, and they are described in a way, their surroundings, the places where they live, what they do when Emma joins them to talk. These things are very telling, and there's not this bombastic metaphor, forceful language stuff, but subtle and keywords that create vivid images, and I it's just wonderful, and I love it. And yeah, if side characters are just it can ruin a story for me. Criterion 3, relationships. These, I already mentioned them, but they are a very, very important part of a story for me. And I need to see that people have attachment, that there is friction in these attached relationships, that there are dependencies, that there are desires and needs, and that they change and move and evolve as the plot moves and as the characters change and evolve due to the events in the plot. It says a lot about a person when you see how they behave, what is their rapport with their friends, how do they treat their friends, how do they treat people who they don't like, how do they relate to them, and or very much of the inner life, also how a character relates to themselves. It can be shown so vividly and organically in a relationship event, when people come together and interact, and it's just, yeah, the relationships, they are so wonderful and interesting. And relationships, a book where relationships are just so wonderful, is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And I know the friend group, it's a mutual appreciation society, and they all love each other and adore each other so much. And the Harker and the Lord, and I don't remember their names. I know that's a bad sign, but I have a vivid image in front of my eyes of who these people are. So fuck names. The Lord who Mina's fiance, then the cowboy who's into Mina but she says no, and Dr. Seward who's into Mina and she says no. They are similar. They are these honor-bound gentlemen, but in the specific way in which they relate to each other and relate to the events and interact, there comes so much life and diversity into that. You'd never confuse these people with each other, and I know these relationships, they are all so positive and so full of love, and usually that's not my thing, but it's just so cute and pretty and alive. And without these relationships, if they weren't in there, this book would be dead and I would not care about it at all. But this little group of friends is just, I love it. I love it so much. And yeah, relationships are a wonderful thing for a story to have. Criterion 4, conflicts. This is, I already alluded to this, but conflict is where things collide, where desires and needs collide, ideas, where there are stones laid in the way of the main character, so they cannot really reach their goal. And an important thing about conflicts is that they are personal, that it's about something that has emotional weight. And this is why personal relationships are such a valuable source and such a well-working source of conflict, because other people, if I like them and there's a conflict, people I like, they mean a lot to me, so the conflict means a lot to me. And people I totally dislike and I don't want to have anything to do with them, this also means a lot, and the conflict therefore means a lot. And it's like, if you have, country A and country B, they're going to war against each other, that's bad, but it doesn't mean a lot just from looking on it from the outside. But if you have one character who lives in country A and another character who lives in country B, and their countries are going to war against each other, and that has consequences for these people, and they have to deal with it, there suddenly it gets real, it gets emotional, it gets touchable. And yeah, and a book that does conflict very well is again Hotel Paradise. And there we have the conflict of Emma, the main character, against the world. She is, well, it's always, in the end you're wondering, because she basically, nearly everyone she meets is super nice to her and very special, and you don't really, it's one of the problems of the book, but her perception is that no one respects her, no one cares about her, no one wants to listen to her, no one sees her, no one cares about what she needs and what she wants. And the same is for Mary Evelyn, who was murdered, and Emma is trying to find out what happened there. And so she sees herself a bit in Mary Evelyn, and it's there that she isn't listened to. She people don't pay attention to her and don't care. Well, most don't care about her, and this conflict, it comes up in every interaction she has, that she wants to be seen and heard and respected, and this drives the story, and it's every interaction is different, every situation is different, so there is very much life in this conflict, and it evolves over time, and without this conflict there wouldn't really be much to this book. Well, murder mystery, so what? But the conflict gives life to this book and to the story and the characters. And yeah, conflict. Very, very important to me. Criterion 4, world building. That's a word that's usually more connected to fantasy or sci-fi, but in every kind of story I need to get a sense of place, a sense of the world I am in. And I read a couple of books lately where this barely happens, and it's really takes me out of the story, because I don't have a place to put the people. I don't have a place in my inner mind where things happen, and it's all just happening on an empty stage, and there's no atmosphere created when there's no world building around. And so it all feels very flat and not really there. But world building also shouldn't come too much to the front, and shouldn't be too in your face and too loud and obnoxious, but because when there's action going on, I don't want to read an essay on the world's politics or something like that. I want to see the action and want to have stuff interwoven in the plot, so that the world building is the set. It's what's on the stage, in the background, behind the characters, giving reference, giving place, but it's not distracting, it's not overpowering the rest of the story. And a novel where this is very well done is again Hotel Paradise. I already mentioned that when I talked about side characters, that the places tell a lot, and it's very nicely done. Every time Emma enters a new place, we get a description of this place, but not like, well, to the right there was this and there was this, but Emma moves through the space and looks around the space, and while she is taking in the place and interacting, moving, she describes her movements relative to the place and her looks relative to the place, and it's very nice, and the locations are very clear in my mind and give a foundation to everything that happens there. So yeah, world building is important for any kind of book. Criterion 6, choreography. I made a video about this too, not a long time ago. if you understand German, you can go and look at the link. If not, I'm sorry, I only have this video in German. Yeah, but choreography is, where is the narrator, where is the narrator when? Where is the narrator looking? What are they showing us? And if events are happening at the same time in different locations, which location is given priority over which? And I need choreography to be smooth, to give a smooth feeling to the events, and to work with the tempo that the story wants, and to work to emphasize and move with the other aspects of the story, to give priority to important characters and give priority to important events, and work for the atmosphere and not against it. And where you might have noticed bad choreography is, for example, in action scenes, where there's the action and then it's someone presses pause and then comes an essay of word building or explanation, or a character thinks 5 pages between one kick and the next, and it just takes the tempo out of the story. The speed is just gone, and it distracts, it rips you out of the story. And another example, again, word building, is if things are explained first and then shown, instead of showing the weird thing and explaining later after you had time as a reader to form questions in your mind and to get confused and to wonder about this and then get the explanation. A book where this is done beautifully is, again, it's Dracula. And maybe it's just me, but I didn't notice it the first few times I read this book. But then I noticed that Dracula, the book, it's the collection of material that Mina and her friends gathered. The book is that Mina collected from all those things. And then when I noticed, I was like, oh my god, this is their book. This book is their book. It's a bit meta, and I was like, whoa! I was so happy when I noticed that. And Dracula is made up. First, we have a bit of Jonathan Harker's diary. Then we have letters, Mina and Lucy exchanging letters. Then we have phonographic recordings of Dr. Seward and other letters and write-ups and some newspaper articles. And so it's a very diverse kind of texts are put together there. We have very many narrators there. But it all works together smoothly because it's very optimized. The perspective that is chosen is always the best perspective to show the certain events. And it's always the most impactful, most insightful, most emotional view on the events. And it's a collage, but it creates a coherent and smooth image. And yeah, it's very nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Criterion 7. Language. And one of the optimal settings I have two optimal settings, but the one is when language flies under the radar, when language is the pen strokes in a painting. When you look at it, you don't see the individual strokes, you see the whole painting. You don't notice the pixels, you notice the painting. And that is a good thing. but I also enjoy it when language is at the forefront of the narration, when it's something special, when it's used to build a world, when it's just very there. For example, if the Mona Lisa were a rug made of a fiber rug, you know, knotted rug thingy, that the material of the story, language is the material of the story, and eccentric material. I like eccentric materials. What I don't like is bombastic language with super metaphors and oh so clever. That super annoys me. And I also don't like very simplistic language that's like only short sentences, and I don't like repetition and all that. So yeah, ideally language is just the floor on which you walk, and it's the stuff of which the word is made, but you don't really notice it. I have three of my favorite books are very, very language centric. That's Brother of Sleep by Robert Schneider, it's The Perfume by Patrick Süskind, and The Virtuoso by Margrethe Moore. And my most favorite is really Brother of Sleep, because it's just, the language is so there and it's so different, and I would like the plot without the language, but the language gives oomph to the plot, and the same for the other books. That's just a complete thing, and they are novels, these books, but they are more than novels. They are artworky things, and that's I like. I also like the language in The Knife of Never Letting Go. The rest of the book is but I loved the language. It was very fun. And books where language is just the floor on which you're working is Dracula and Hotel Paradise. The language is there, it makes up stuff, but it's not at the forefront of the events. And a book that's language centric is one that would get 10 points for language if I like the way it's language centric. And books like Dracula and Hotel Paradise, they would get 5 points, because the language isn't bad, but it's not I didn't notice it very positively. I didn't have especially much fun with it, so it would be 5 points in this instance. Personal touch, the 8th criterion, is something I can't really generalize. It's not really originality, but can I feel the author's passion? Is there some talent that comes through, some cool idea, some cool way of telling things? And it's very, very subjective, and sometimes it comes from something I read in the postscript, that's good for my overall rating, or not so good. But yeah, and my favorite books, they all have this feeling of personal touch. It's not so much with The Perfume. I don't know, for some reason it feels like busy work a bit, and I don't know. And the others, Brother of Sleep, The Virtuoso, there is something. And Hotel Paradise and Dracula, there's a certain I don't know why I don't feel it so much with the perfume. Maybe it's just the main character who's so unemotional, and that just colors my perception of the whole book. But yeah, but this is something that's also that I notice if it's there, and that I notice if it's not there, and it's an important point to me. Criterion 9, DNF. It's self-explanatory. Did I finish the book or didn't I? Category 10, fun. This is very, very subjective, and it's after I finished reading the book, if I look back, do I think, oh yes, this was no? Or do I look back and think, well, it's a book? Or do I look back and think, oh, why did I do this to myself? And that's the 3 points of reference in this. And it's also, even if I didn't finish a book, it can get 10 points in the fun category. Here's an example, is The Knife of Never Letting Go. I didn't finish the book. It got on my nerves so badly at a point, but the beginning was so much fun, and it was so I like the beginning, the first few chapters of The Knife of Never Letting Go. I loved them, and I had so much fun with them. So here it would get 10 points. And also Moby Dick, one of my favorite books. It's not good. Moby Dick, no, it's not a good book. It's a mess, but I had so much fun with it. And the same for Varney the Vampire. So bad, but I had so much fun. So this is a very subjective emotional category, and yeah, that's the 10th and last category. So how do I assign points? I already mentioned language, but in general I give 0 points for a category if, for example, for a main character, for relationships, conflict, if these things basically don't exist, then it's 0 points. Or if they do exist, but they are super annoying, they got lots of negative attention from me, and they took me out of the story, and they were just not conductive, not beneficial for the book, but detrimental, then they get 0 points. 5 points is when something is, I didn't notice it really positively, and I like it, and it was fun, and it was good, and it was something that kept me inside the book. So if I give 5 points in a category, that's not a bad rating. It's a neutral rating. Bad rating starts below 5 points. So and 4, it's not catastrophic. Is 2, 1, or 0 points. It's where the catastrophe happens. And above that, between 3 and 4, it's bad, but it's not the catastrophic range. And yeah, so 5, if I give someone 5 points for something, it's just neutral. And yeah, that's how I assign points. Now, some of you may wonder, what about plot? What about tension? Why aren't those categories in your rating system? Well, plot is main characters, it's side characters, it's relationships, it's conflicts, it's world building. These 5 things are plot. So I basically have plot 5 times in my rating system. And tension, again, it's main characters, side characters, it's conflicts, it's choreography. These are, again, multiple aspects which have to do with tension. So these both aspects are already in my rating system, and adding them in as separate points would add nothing, then wouldn't make it more informative, or it wouldn't tell you more if these 2 points were added in another time. Yeah, and that is my rating system. These are the things that make a good book in my opinion, and that make me have fun with a book and enjoy it, and after finishing it feel like, yay, I read a great book. And yeah, if you have any questions, or if you want to talk about your own criteria when it comes to good books, just leave a comment. I'm always interested in hearing other people's thoughts. And yeah, see you in the next video. Bye bye.